Hey gang, my name is Alex Rhodes, and this is the aptly named Alex Rhodes Show featuring independent artist interviews, their songs, and sometimes even live performances. We talk about the art, the music, the deep stuff, how it all relates to marketing, which is so necessary in today's world. And then we chat just all around silliness. This show airs live each week on Monday from 7 to 9 Mountain. That's 9 to 11 Eastern, 8 to 10 Central Time, and 6 to 8 Pacific Time. It airs on kpeo.org, World Community Radio. But for you modern day listeners who don't believe in appointment-based entertainment, I edit it to podcast every week, most weeks. Welcome to episode 5. My guest today is Rene Moffatt, a Denver-based singer-songwriter, father, and fellow coffee lover. I first met Rene at Durango Song Expo, then we happened to bump into each other at our favorite coffee roaster in Denver, Kaladi Coffee, where we were both working using their great Wi-Fi and well-crafted, air-roasted, caffeinated delicacies. Yes, I just said that. Rene has a singer-songwriter residency at the Molecule Effect in Denver, and as promotional luck would have it, I will be playing a song swap with him at the Molecule Effect this Friday. So please join us for some great coffee, wine, beer, and some great original tunes. It's almost as if the timing of this broadcast were planned. Now, if you're listening to this after the fact, I'm sure we'll have some video to share from that show. Rene's music can best be described as heady folk for the open-hearted. He says he stands on the shoulders of his greatest influences, Jackson Browne, the Beatles, Billy Joel, and he writes lyric-driven songs and singable melodies that fit right into your favorite playlist, alongside Josh Ritter, Jeff Tweedy, and the Avett Brothers. He's been featured in 303 Magazine's Music You Should Know, and he was a finalist in the 2020 Uhlrgrass Troubadour Contest. A self-described late bloomer, I know a thing or two about that, Rene is hell-bent on catching up with his own songwriting ambitions. Over the last decade, he's taken his talent, knack for songwriting, and turned it into a full-fledged pursuit, manifesting in a handful of notable releases. His debut EP, Here and Now Is Home, was nominated for Folk Contemporary Album of the Year by the Washington Area Music Association in D.C., and the song Demons on Your Sleeve was given an honorable mention by the Songwriters Association of Washington. While residing in the nation's capital, Moffatt performed at notable venues including the Iota Club and Cafe, the Hamilton, and the Smithsonian's Luce Center. We talk songwriting, marketing, and he plays some live tunes for us in the studio. Let's just get to it right now, Rene Moffatt.
If I stay put, will you know where to look? And when the day does come, will I know you are the one? What if you were meant for me, but I was too caught up in life to see? What if you were meant for me, but I was too caught up in life to see? What if you were meant for me? What if you were meant for me? Were meant for me, but I was too caught up in life to
What if you, Rene Moffatt on kpeo.org. It's Monday night, 7 o'clock Mountain Time. You're listening to the Alex Rhodes Show. And right here in the studio, what if I were Alex Rhodes and what if you were Rene Moffatt right here in the studio? How you doing?
Hey, Alex, how are you? It's good seeing you again.
I'm great. Good seeing you. Thanks for stopping by.
Absolutely.
So...
You just criticized me for how long that song was.
It's 4 minutes and 20 seconds, 27 seconds. If you're not under 3 minutes,
very true.
You're lucky you're getting radio play tonight.
Trey, you're lucky this is an independent station so that we can do that. We can go over 4 minutes. Point taken.
So, you're a singer-songwriter. Yeah. We met. Where did we meet?
I saw you at Durango.
Yes.
We were in a couple sessions together, and I liked the song that you played. And then, fast forward like a week or two later, we met in a coffee shop because I saw you at this coffee shop that I go to all the time, and I'm like, wait a minute, you're Alex. Do you live near here? Kind of thing. So
I'll do a little plug. Kaladi Coffee. They air roast the beans.
Air roast. It's all about the air roast.
I used to go there every single day. And now you're drinking coffee from...
Well, Molecule Effect, which we'll talk about later, they roast not all Kaladi. Or they use all Kaladi. So that was one of my first questions, and we'll get to this. When I went in to talk to them about doing some music there, I was like, who do you pour? And they were like Kaladi, and I was like, we're good.
This is very important to me as an artist. I must know that you have quality coffee beans.
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah. So you were going there all the time.
I was. That was my work spot because another plug for them, you buy a cup of coffee, if you sit there long enough, they'll give you another one for free.
There you go.
Oh my God.
Like all good coffee
most
shops.
Places. But yeah, they had good Wi-Fi.
Cool.
Let's start with, who are you? What are you doing here?
What am I doing here? It's specifically in Denver. My wife, we were living in Dallas. I met in Dallas. I grew up in Texas, but I moved to the East Coast for a number of years, almost 10 in total. Moved back home to Texas just to be near family, and ended up meeting my now wife. So back in 2015, she works in the museum sort of world. She got a job at the Denver Art Museum, and so that brought us to Denver.
Nice.
Yeah, so we've been here for, it'll be 7 years in October, and I've just been playing as much as I can over the last few years, releasing some music, trying to meet as many artists as I can. Community is so important, and so the more artists I meet, the better. To hopefully, just make a musical home here.
So we're in an artsy-fartsy household.
Yes. Very
Denver Art Museum, songwriter, and
art director. Yeah,
graphic designer as well, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of art going on.
Yeah.
How are you meeting people in the community? Because I think that's something that a lot of musicians struggle with, and a lot of artists in general.
Right. Well, it's having regular places is always good because then you see new people, without having to go to too many different places. But it's a lot of it is just when you're looking at Facebook, when you're looking on Instagram, I'm constantly making note of different venues, different artists that I don't know, because the more that sort of goes into my head, the more I recognize people when I'm out in public, or if I see a bill at a show, Lost Lake or something like that, and I recognize the name, I'm like, oh, I'm going to go see that show because I've seen that person, online a bunch. But the past 2 years has been tough with the pandemic and everything kind of hunkered down, but it's kind of brought a lot of us together. I mean, I connected with so many people online that I wouldn't have before, just because we couldn't go out and have a beer. We couldn't go out and do those simple things. So now that we're starting to be able to get out a little bit more, for artists, it's attending open mics. It's seeing other people's shows. It's literally just, I'll email artists and say, let's just go have coffee. Let's just go have a beer. And we end up usually just venting and talking about all this stuff that, but that's how it's done. And then hopefully when, people start sharing gigs and, inviting people to play on different stuff and then working together in the studio and then hopefully working on, community things. I mean, I don't know how else it's built.
Now, I'm a dad, you're a dad.
Yeah.
where do you find the time once you see all these so many fun things online? Oh, that's a cool venue. I've never been there. I want to see that. Ooh, there's a new artist over here. That sounds interesting. How do you make that happen?
Part of it is there's a lot of negotiation and compromise and sharing of responsibilities. And so, if I am going to go out, late or something like that, I always try to, okay, you can have the next night kind of thing. I mean, if you're a parent, I feel like you have to do that, because then one person starts feeling like the other person's not there. What's funny about kids, until they're, I don't know, 5 or 6, I mean, they always go to sleep at like 7, so after 7, you're kind of free as long as someone's still at the house.
That's true.
So I'll go out to, I might have a gig. I might go out and have coffee with someone, have a beer. That's part of it. But then also, what's kind of cool about Denver and probably Colorado in general is there's a lot of outdoor venues. Even if it's just your brewery that has a concrete stage in the back, that stuff's great for kids and families. I mean, I see so many more kids and families out. Like Ratio just took over Declaration Spot down in South Broadway.
Oh, okay.
They have a brand new stage out there. I mean, that's going to be awesome during the summer. So, like, that's what's really cool about Colorado and Denver, specifically when it comes to families and getting out and doing stuff, is that it's very accessible. I mean, there's outdoor 38th State or whatever it's called up in Rhino. Like, we go there because it's easy to have my kid who just wants to run around. We can grab beers, walk around. That is very conducive to like what you have to do as a parent, which is like, my kid's got to run out this energy.
Drink.
Yeah, exactly.
Me,
Yeah, no, you're right. Secondary subtitle here, subtext.
Well, that brings your graphic design and marketing. I'm a marketer. Let's talk a little bit about that and the market there, because there is a giant market, and I don't think it's unique to Colorado and Denver. It's fairly unique to certain areas where you do have people in their 30s, 40s with young kids who still want to get out and do things.
Right. As
a musician, how do you get into that market?
How do you get into the market of catering to those people?
Yes.
No, that's a very good question. I think for one, I mean, from a logistics standpoint, daytime shows, you're immediately going to get that market more than anybody. And this has been something that people who are in the arts world art and music world have been talking about for a lot longer time than just, pre-COVID or post-COVID. There is so much demand to catering to different audiences at different life stages. So when you're older and you have kids, you can't stay out until 12 o'clock, 1 a.m. in the morning at a show. So there are some venues that cater to earlier shows. Like let's start at 6 and we're done by 9. That way, you're not paying so much for a babysitter. Maybe, someone can come over and watch them, kind of thing. There's a lot of movement to create more of those opportunities so that more people can go out and see the shows. Afternoon matinee shows are a great thing. There is a new bar / community house down. It's called the Table Public House.
Yeah.
Yeah, have you heard about it?
Yeah.
So it's down off Evans, down in Southwest Denver, and it's great because they have full bar and they have some food, and coffee, and they open early in the morning. But they also have a kids play area. So like we go there to hang out, and then the kid can play and do their thing, and and it feels comfortable, feels like a living room. Well, there's no reason why they couldn't do a concert series that was basically for adult music for people who just happen to have kids.
Sure, yeah.
Like, we need that. There is a market for that there. It just takes, a venue and a couple artists, a little bit of a commitment to say, we're going to do this and we're going to advertise it as that so that the word gets out. And you have to go for probably 6-8 months before you really start getting heard.
Catches on.
Yeah, it catches on. You have to commit to it a little bit. But there are opportunities like that all over the place. It's just, you have to identify that there's at least a little bit of an audience for it, and then commit to it. Find people who are interested in bringing those people together.
I like it. Well, let's check out King of the Mountain.
Yes.
And then we'll come back and talk some more.
Sounds good.
Rene Moffatt on KPEO. We are broadcasting live from KYBN Mountain View, California, and the mile-high city of Denver, Colorado. This is KPEO World Community Radio. You're listening to The Alex Rhodes Show.
I'm Paul George of the Indiana Pacers. When I was 6, my days were spent playing basketball. When I was 6, my dream was to make it to the NBA. When I was 6, my mom had a stroke. So I want you to learn to spot a stroke fast. F-A-S-T. F, face drooping. A, arm weakness. S, speech difficulty. T, time to call 911. I'm Paul George. Spot a stroke fast. Visit strokeassociation.org. Brought to you by the American Stroke Association and the Ad Council.
This is Hands of Soul Joseph Wooten, keyboardist with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inducted Steve Miller and the Wooten Brothers from Nashville, Tennessee. You are listening to KPEO World Community Radio.
I've been broke so many times, and that don't include today. And no matter how dirt poor I feel, well, I've got no room to say. 'Cause I was born into the kind of wealth you just don't find anywhere. The conscience, liberty, the lifelong pursuit, the freedom to grow my hair. Yeah, yeah, yeah. All that we possess, man, we've got it good, but that does not lead to happiness, and I doubt it ever would. And yet we're climbing all over each other and trying to get up on that hill, and if we don't happen to make it, somebody will, somebody will. Yeah, yeah, yeah. To make up excuses, say it's all relative, but I don't know what the use is, 'cause that ain't no way to live. And yet we're climbing all over each other and trying to get up on that hill, and if we don't happen to make it, somebody will, somebody will. There were times I will admit I was chasing all of it, worked my fingers to the bone, pressed my nose against the stone, spent my afternoons alone in a prison on my own. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the games they play make no sense, you see. They all want to be king of the mountain, and that's quite alright with me, 'cause we're climbing all over each other and trying to get up on that hill, and if we don't happen to make it, somebody will, somebody will, somebody will, yeah, yeah, somebody will. Yeah, that's a good segue.
King of the Mountain by Rene Moffatt on KPEO.org. Quick question.
Yes.
Are you the king of the mountain?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I am.
Tonight you are on
Tonight
the show.
I am. King, yeah, because King of the Mountain, I mean, the origin of that story or that song was I'd been working kind of in the corporate world long enough to kind of be like, I'm over this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, I remember when I first got out of school and got my first job, literally 6 months later, I was like, what is this? Like, is this what the rest of our life is supposed to look like? And as a result of not of being so disappointed in that construct, I was like, I poured myself back into music and rediscovered music at that point, because I got into music later in my mid to late 20s. And so as a result, when after a while I was distanced enough, like I didn't want to climb a corporate ladder.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, there's plenty of other people who want to do that. And so in metaphorically, kids who are fighting over to be king of the mountain, playing that game where they're knocking themselves off, like I just kind of stole that
Sure.
and, made it kind of the phrase. And so to me, king of the mountain means being the king of your own mountain as opposed to, someone else's. But,
I like it. Yeah, I like the kid lines in there, and it brings you back to those very sensory rich kind of experiences as a kid.
Yeah.
Now, what did you major in college?
It was hodgepodge. It was mostly graphic design, but I ended up with a BA in what's called art and performance. It was a school took all my transfer credits and gave me a degree, which I'm extremely grateful for.
So art, performance, and
Yeah.
then you went into the corporate world.
Yeah, but it was corporate. Always doing design. I mean, I was still
Okay.
I was still doing
I was going
graphic
to say,
design.
big surprise that didn't work out.
Yeah, no. I was still doing graphic design, but it just was for larger and larger agencies. And I mean, that at some point becomes like working for a corporation. I mean, it's unless you're sticking small.
Well, let's dig into that a little bit, because I feel like, we are in a society that values the dollar, and you have to. I mean, we live in a capitalist society, but being king of the mountain, being at the top of your mountain, as you're saying, as opposed to the top of the same mountain that everybody's trying to climb,
Right.
to be the CEO. How did you know that wasn't for you? And I think that's tough to learn at 23 or 24 when you get out of school.
Yeah, I think part of it was because the closet artist in me, that those emotions and that desire was so strong that it wasn't going to let me just only pursue like climbing a corporate ladder. I mean, it was palpable. And so I paid attention to that. And yes, I kept working in the corporate world, but it was the difference between letting it, turn into something immediately soul-sucking and having a healthy distance between the two. So I had my art on the side. I could go in and work 8 hours a day and do my thing and then come home and do art, and it helped keep a healthy balance. I mean,
Gotcha.
that's the role of art, one role that art can play. But it's that sentiment and that feeling in me was strong enough to kind of always be there and never go away. Otherwise, I mean, I read another really great book, because we mentioned the War of Art.
Mm-hmm.
There's another one called Ignore Everybody and 39 Other Ways to Creativity or something. And it's by an artist named Hugh MacLeod. And he worked at Agency World. He worked at in New York, and then he started doodling on the back of business cards. And it turned into this huge thing where it's like a business for him now, and he does consulting and all these kinds of things. But he wrote this book that basically talked about how artists should think about themselves, how artists, don't need to go chasing off to LA or Nashville to do their own art. You just need to do your own art, carry it through, meet the right people, and that kind of thing. He had this really great story where he was living in London, and this was years ago, probably 30 years ago. He was living in London, and the person above him in the flat was Tim Burton.
Oh, wow.
And he got invited to some similar dinner party. And Tim Burton's asking him, so what do you do? And he's like, well, I work in ad agencies, but I'm kind of an artist on the side. And Tim Burton's like, well, what's this artist thing? Like, are you going to do something with it? And he's like, oh, I don't know. He's hemming and hawing and all this stuff. And finally, Tim Burton says, well, if you don't do something with it, it's going to kill you. Like, you have to do something with it. Otherwise, you're going to get 15, 20 years down the road, and it's going to manifest in completely ways you don't want. I'm going to, have reckless behavior. I'm going to, treat people wrong. I'm going to, seek risk in ways that I don't need to. Because if you don't pay attention to that core little nugget of that artistic entity inside of you, it'll eat you alive. I mean, you have to find an outlet for it. I learned that. I've learned that the hard way.
I love where this conversation is going, because, I think there's some aspect in here of quote unquote making it. And that there's the king of the mountain of I'm going to chase the corporate dream. And then there's the king of the mountain of I'm going to be myself and pursue this art. And I feel like there's a lot of, and I do this too because we're about the same age, and
Mhm.
I'm realistic. I'm 40, but I can't not do this.
Right. Yeah.
Why?
Why? I think I think there's I mean it's a life force. I mean there's something going on when you feel the need to create, and everybody has it. It just is at different levels, and then they either pursue it or they don't, or maybe maybe I just make little handcrafted wood sculptures and that does it enough for me. That's fine.
Yeah.
Everybody has something that they need to do. I think for some people it just happens to be a little bit stronger, and maybe they had a proclivity for it when they were younger, and so they had some skills. I mean, like most of us played music when we were younger, so we kind of understood it a little bit, and then as you get older and you're in your 20s and you start writing and playing out, you get into the swing of it that way. But yeah, it's yeah. I mean,
It's a life force.
I think it is. Yeah, I think it's definitely a life force, and whether if you pay attention to it and you feed it in the right way and you treat it well, I mean, it's gonna grow into something that's great. If you neglect it, I mean, it's like a plant. If you want to use the metaphor
Sure.
of a plant or a child, it takes nurturing and it takes work, but the rewards are there. It's just different rewards than monetary.
Yeah.
I mean, if we there is so much of our lives that we do and conduct that has nothing to do with money. We just tend to think that the money is the biggest part, that we're going after because it takes up our days. We spend 8 hours a day making money, and so we think that we spend our lives making money when, what's the rest of it? I mean, when you turn it off, you have to go do something else.
But to that point, there is some aspect of when I spend this time on this and I show up to whatever venue it is, I want you to pay me. Like
Sure.
And that's the capitalist nature of our society, and that's part of the value that anything brings, product or service, right?
And that's I was taught because I got into music late. I grew up playing piano, but if I wanted to become a singer-songwriter and play out live, you have to go to New York if you're going to have pianos at your disposal. Like I didn't want to carry around a huge keyboard, so I learned how to play guitar so that I could start doing open mics and stuff. So I went to lessons at a very good like sort of youth prep school in DC where these kids would later go to Juilliard, but they had like a rock division, and like that was the part that I went to. So I'm this like 25-year-old kid, and there's like 12-year-old phenoms in the next room playing insane classical works and stuff. But I had an instructor who was both classically trained, but also he gigged regularly with like rock bands and things like that. So he could do both. So a really good education from him. And I remember the first time I had like at least a couple songs under my belt, he was like, "You are now employable." Like, and he was like, "You have a service." And that's the thing that so many artists don't understand, is that you don't get this immense artistic recognition right out of the box. No one does that to you unless you are a famous artist's son or like daughter or something.
Sure.
Then they're going to say, "Oh, we're waiting for you to see what happens." No, that doesn't happen to anybody else. What happens is you learn a skill, and then you're employable, and now you can get a gig. And usually with most gigs, like if you can play and you can bring a couple people out, there's got to be some money in it. I mean, we're all going to take free gigs every once in a while, but it's like, so when you grasp that concept of being employable, then it gives you a little bit of confidence to go out and say, "I will play that gig in the afternoon, but I do it for $100, and a couple, a free meal or something like that." Then that's how, art has to live in some degree of you don't have to call it capitalism, but there's a trade there. There's a barter there. Someone could give you, a free meal for singing, or someone could give you $100 for singing, or maybe, there at times we play for exposure, but it has to be really, really good exposure before you do it. So yeah, I mean, that was an important lesson, because then I saw what I had to offer is completely different. I was like, oh, I can use this to make money, which a lot of people do. A lot of people just play for money. I mean, a lot of people learn a whole bunch of covers and go out and only do that, and that's the way they make their living. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Sure.
So that was an important lesson, because then it gave me the ability to go out and sell myself as a service, not just selling myself as an artist, because that requires a lot more. You have to be really good for people to say, I don't care what it is. I'll pay for it. I'll whatever. Like, this is so good. Like, that takes years to develop.
That's brand. That's...
Yep. Yeah. It's timing. It's like things that are so out of your control. But when you learn a couple songs, you're employable. Get out there and employ yourself.
So this brings me to a question, because at some point in your artistic career, you're playing cover. I was in a band in college, and we played a bunch of cover songs, and we played some songs that we wrote. And there was this stigma to being, we're not a cover band.
Right.
But that's what people want to hear, especially right now, right? Like the trendy thing is the tribute band or the mashup band. I'm exploring some of that myself. Stay tuned, and we'll have some show announcements for you. Why is there that stigma about being a cover band? Because it's a legitimate service that you're providing that people really do want.
Yeah, I think the stigma also has to be addressed from both ends. Yes, there is a public that wants to hear what they're familiar with. Like, that's why people usually want to hear cover music or go see cover bands or tribute bands. But at the same time, artists also feel like there's a need to make a living doing what they're doing. And so many artists make the decision that, well, I'm going to find a service, being in a cover band, in order to pay the bills so that I can live the lifestyle that I want and continue making my own art, or just be around the people that I want to be. So it's coming from both ends, because a lot of artists, don't want to take cover gigs because it's about artistic integrity. Well, many of them, a few years later, will recognize, but if I take a few cover gigs, I'll get paid, and that can help me continue making my own art. Like, we make those connections at different points in our lives. Some people make them immediately, which I didn't. I mean, I still to this day, I'm playing maybe one or two covers in a set. And the gig that we'll talk about this Friday, I think of it as an originals night.
Sure.
Like you can play a cover, but people are here and they've been not groomed, but they've been educated that you're going to come here and see original music, and the owners are okay with it, and the audience is okay with it. If you can hold a room and it's entertaining, that's all that matters. And then what you do is, if you end up playing a cover that's familiar, sometimes they're just, they go crazy because they're like, oh yeah, I remember that. Oh, he's doing that song. So there's different levels of acceptance from the audience in terms of what they're expecting, also from the artist and what life stage they're at. They might come out of the box saying, I'm going to do covers because if I learn 30 covers, I can go get a $300 gig. Whereas a lot of other artists are like, I'm really just going to work on my stuff a lot because I'm more interested in writing my own material, and then maybe learn a couple covers and slip them in here and there. I mean, it's far ranging, the spectrum. Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the gig on Friday night.
Yes,
the Molecule Effect.
It's a coffee shop. They have two locations here in Denver. One most people are familiar with, which is over on in the Santa Fe Arts District. So I think it's 8th in Santa Fe.
Okay.
They've had that one for about 7 years, and they just opened a new location about a year and a half ago in Wash Park at Logan and Alameda. And so back over the summer, I approached them about doing a songwriter residency, and they were game. And they have comedy there on Thursday nights, and on Friday nights. Every Friday night I play there. And as of the new year, I've started to book what I'm calling song swaps. And I'm really excited that you're going to come and play this Friday at the Molecule Effect. But we sit on stage and we trade songs for 2 hours, and it's a lot of fun.
Just back and forth. So you've been doing every Friday night.
Yep.
Molecule Effect. What time?
7 to 9.
7 to 9 at the Molecule Effect. Yep. Song swap, and you're gonna hear original music from yourself, Rene, and then your guest for the night, which just so happens to be me this week.
Co-promotion.
Tell me about some of the other artists you've had.
I did a song swap in December. We did kind of a test one with Andrew Palomara, who's a Cincinnati artist who's now moving to Denver, I think, here in the next few weeks. Went really, really well and had a great reception, and so I wanted to do more. So Earlier this month, Ian Mahan, who's Ian did one.
I've written with Ian. He's a great guy.
Yeah, he's super good. He comes out to the venue all the time to hang out and give me good sound check advice and stuff like that. But he played. Mickey Balder is gonna play. We had to reschedule. Yeah, we had to reschedule that one because I had COVID 2 weeks ago. And then
welcome back.
I know, right? Luckily, knock on wood, it wasn't too bad. But you'll play this Friday. The following Friday, I think it's Jenny Shawhan.
Jenny. I had coffee with Jenny today.
Oh, today?
This morning.
Coffee
and art. We're changing the name of the show. That's
it. Conversations with artists and coffee. What's funny is I had coffee with her like 3 weeks ago because I wanted to sort of talk through this song swap gig. And she was like, I know Alex, he was in my video. So I guess you guys have done my
she's
stuff
doing a
together.
video release party in April.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So she's going to play. And then Miguel Avina from Itzcali, he's going to do an acoustic set, which I'm really excited about because he's in a rock band and he's really well known around here. And he has like, not an exhibit, but he's featured in an exhibit in the Denver Museum of Natural History and is playing a Swallow Hill show here soon. So that's really exciting. And then Sam Paul, who's a good friend of Ian's, he's also going to play later in April. And then, I'm trying to do 2 a month.
Awesome.
Just to keep different people coming in. I want people to play the space. I want people to be playing their original music. And that's the whole name of the game with the residency is to keep it mixed up like that.
So Molecule Effect on Logan and Alameda, excuse me. Logan and Alameda, 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock every Friday night. So you're playing every Friday, and then every other Friday you do the song swap.
Pretty much, yeah. Twice a month I do song swap, yeah.
All right, I'm going to tell a story about Mickey Balder, which I think she'll be okay with me telling.
Oh, please.
And then would you mind playing a song for us?
Happy to.
All right, so I'm at Song School.
Oh, yeah.
In Lyons, Colorado. It's a lovely place. You get to camp out. You learn from professional songwriters, and it's just a great artist community. There are like 300 to 500 songwriters.
Oh, nice.
I
want to go.
Oh, you got to go. It's great. Yeah. I'm in this class. Amy Speece, who's a singer-songwriter, teaches, and she's so great at the performance aspect.
Right.
And Mickey is the subject of the class, and so she's singing this song about, it's this heartbreaking song, written to a lover. I imagine it's a lover. I'm not going to talk about Mickey's personal life. I don't know anything about it. And she's in front of everyone, and Amy's giving her instruction on, try this, do this, do this. And then she said, you need to sing to the person. And Amy turns to me and she said, you're the breakup guy. Stand up there. So I don't know Mickey at this point. And I'm standing 6 feet away from her.
Wow.
And she's staring into my eyes and singing this heartbreaking song.
Wow.
And it was an intense way to meet a person for the first time.
So now I think that gives you, like, you have to be billed to be in the music video for that song.
What song are you going to play for us?
I'm going to play a song, that sounds all right, called Hug You a Little Harder. And I'll play it, and then we can kind of talk through it a little bit. There we go. It goes like this. You said hello with no quiver in your voice, and if there was, I couldn't tell. Although you sounded a bit too overjoyed, I heard no warning bell. When the weight becomes too heavy and you hit the time you fell, don't matter how you stood, it don't mean you're looking good just because you wore it well. Should have held you a little closer closer. I should have walked you to your door. Now I'll have to walk much further. If I'd only known the time before. If I'd only known the time before. The world outside, it grows angrier each day. It took too long for us to see, and it'll take longer before we ever tame the beast inside of you and me. Can't forget about tomorrow, even if we've lost the midday sun. I'm going out to look for you. I just hope you're looking too. The cloud has shadowed everyone. I should have hugged you a little harder. I should have walked you to your door. Now I'll have to walk much farther. If I'd only known the time before. If I'd only known the time before, I would have tried to soak you up like water to a soul that's dry. And there's a truth that we're never told. When you feel what the future holds, your silver turns to gold. Should have hugged you a little harder. I should have walked you to your door. Now I'll have to walk much farther, 'cause I've only known the time before. Oh, I should have hugged you a little harder. I should have hugged you a little harder. I should have hugged you a little harder. If I'd only known the time before. If I'd only known the time before.
Excellent.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much. I should point out, I was filming that.
All right.
And I actually told you, Ellsworth was here, and
Oh, yeah.
I didn't tell her I was going to film her, and then she started playing, and I was like, I probably should have asked. She did great. She did great.
It's like, what are you doing with that thing in my
Oh,
face?
great. So tell us about, I should have hugged you a little harder.
So, the feelings and the sentiments for that song happened right after we all shut down, really everything shut down, because I had just seen my parents over the holidays, and my daughter was born. They came up and stayed for a couple weeks, which was great. And then they left and to go back home to Texas. And then a few months later, the pandemic hit, and all of a sudden we were sort of cut off from the world to a degree. You know, it's just our families, just, small circles, that kind of thing. And a couple other, things were happening. People that I knew, were experiencing trials and tribulations of their own. But then when you know them, sometimes you don't know what they're going through, and then later you find out. And just those sentiments made me kind of not regret, but also just acknowledge. Had I known that we were all going to shut down, had we have known, so much of what other people are going through, you may have looked at them differently or hugged them a little harder the last time you saw them, kind of thing. And it just kind of grew out of that, because for so long, we didn't know when we were going to get to see. It took me a full year and a half before I saw my parents again.
Yeah.
And that happened for so many people. Some people still haven't seen their favorite people in the world for 2.5 years or whatever. And that's really where the idea for that song came, and it worked out. I mean, in terms of finishing the song, feeling good about it. I was part of this online. It was called Cabinet in the Community. I don't know if you'd seen me post about it, but the mayor of Denver, because of the pandemic, started doing these Cabinet in the Communities where he goes out and meets with each district. There's 7 or I think 11 districts here in Denver. Well, this one was online because we were in the middle of COVID, and our councilman invited a couple of people to do kind of featured spots. So one was an architect professional talking about some historic houses in our neighborhood, and then they usually bring an artist to play. And my councilman, who we've talked before, he knew that I was an artist and invited me to play a song. Well, I think I had planned on playing "Hug You a Little Harder" during this online Zoom sort of meeting, but what happened the day before was the shootings in Boulder. And so the
gosh.
whole like thing was very somber. We acknowledged what had just happened. I'm sure we had a moment of silence. And then, I'm playing like to kick off the whole thing. And so I play this song, and you just never know when you play a song who it's going to be for. And I was basically getting to play this song for all these people who were, and it was mostly city officials, but at the same time, a lot of community members who were watching. We were all going through, this experience together with the shootings in Boulder and trying to make some sense of it. And then I had people email me after the song just saying, thank you for playing that. Like, that meant so much in that moment. And so that's the other crazy thing about after writing a song, is that you just never know where like its essence is going to come back at you.
Yeah.
And it turns into different things or different people. And so it's one of the stories I like telling about that particular song, was that, you write it in a vacuum with your own feelings, or maybe some feelings pulled from somewhere else. But then once you put it out in the world, it turns into something different, and it means different things to different people. People could hear it once, and it means something completely different than your original intention. And Jeff Tweedy really made a point in talking about this, and I think it was it Ashes of American Flags, that documentary of his.
I don't. There's a song on their 4th album that's all about that.
Yeah, the very last song.
Yeah.
It's like you put it out in the world, and it's.
What was yours is someone else's from now on.
Yeah, and like that is just so beautiful, and a great way to look at art in general, because we make it, we channel whatever it is, we put it out there, but then after that, anybody who comes at it with their own life perspective is going to have a different view of that piece of art.
Do you have certain songs, or maybe it's movies or books, that come back into season for you in a different way?
Yes, I think having. For one that's kind of a funny story is that years ago, before I met my wife, I wrote a song called Pearl for someone who I wasn't dating. We were just sort of like very good friends, but obviously we kind of like, we had hit it off, but nothing ever happened. But I wrote this song, and it was called Pearl, and it was really kind of like, she was a lot younger than I was, so I wrote this almost from the perspective of almost like advice, or kind of like, here's what you're going to see in the world kind of thing. And I wrote it, and I would perform it, and it was fine and everything. But then fast forward like 7 years later, my daughter was born on December 7th, which is Pearl Harbor. And so that word Pearl was kind of in my head. And then, of course, when I would sing my song, the song can be interpreted as I'm singing it to a younger me, or, which is probably was a little bit more the impetus when I initially wrote it, but also singing it to my offspring, or, you're as certain artists would write songs for their sons or daughters kind of thing. And so it sounded that way. So now we just call it the song that I wrote for my daughter. And we keep trying to come up with a better story. Like how do I make this not sound creepy, where I kind of wrote it for a girl and then it just kind of went away for a while and then I brought it back. I mean, and I have this conversation openly with my wife and like my mother-in-law, like everybody's in on the joke that like this song was not written for my daughter, but it sounds really good. So, you know, you get songs like that just kind of, you know, are totally new in a few years. But yeah, that happens all the time. I mean, a lot of it's lyrics. You know, a lyric is going to mean something different to you, you know, after you've written it. You know? And when you hear that song, just like, I mean, I remember songs are so indelible that really, really big songs that were impressionable to me. I remember exactly where I was, what I was doing in the very moment that I first heard it. When I first heard David Gray's, the line is like lights going from red to green. What is that song? Blanking on.
Saturday, I'm going nowhere. All the lights turning. If you want it, you can have it.
Yeah.
Come and get it.
Yeah. I saw him in concert. It was so good. I remember I was in my dorm room, like waking up. That song woke me up on the radio.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so like, I remember that. I remember the first time I heard Rolling in the Deep with Adele.
Mm-hmm.
I was in DC and I was driving in a car going under this specific bridge. Like, I just have this very visual connection to songs when I hear them for the first time. When I heard like the Cranberries, like one of their really big hits, I was in a car with my soccer teammates going to practice or something like that. And like, I was always listening to oldies. And so like it was like revelatory when I heard this song.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I was like, whoa, there's more music out there that I actually liked. It's not like oldies or whatever. My wife constantly teases me about how I know like every song from like 1949 through like the 70s.
You should hang out with my wife because she was scorned by Milli Vanilli.
What?
She returned her tape and got her money back. And she swore off new music.
Really?
And
so what year was that? That was
early 90s?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And
that's funny.
So she went back to oldies.
Wow.
So she's a big fan of oldies.
Oh, man. There was an oldies radio station in my hometown. I think they're kind of still around and in a different incarnation, but their call sign, it was an AM station.
Mm-hmm. You're listening to AM? You're next level.
And it was coming in like loud and clear, too, because this was like a really big station. It was called the Mighty 1290, and their call sign was, "It's not how big your tower is, it's how you use it." And it was just like, I mean, and my brother and I, we were listening to the station from the age of like 5 to like 15, just all the time.
So let's talk about how cool you were in high school.
I was so cool. I was giving out mixtapes of Jackson Brown to girls that I liked. Yeah.
Jackson Brown, that's some good stuff, though.
It is, but not to a high school like.
Doctor My Eyes.
It's great.
Oh wow! Who do you think is doing it the best right now, songwriting wise? Current artist.
Well, I mean, I'm a big Jason Isbell fan, and it's not just his songwriting, but it's also his perspective and stances and the voice that he's using at the same time. I mean, he's bigger than he's ever been in terms of recognition and critical acclaim. Mm-hmm. But at that very moment, he is giving some very, very good doses of medicine to his own audience, to people who are adjacent to his own audience, to his own sort of family. And I use that with like small f family. Like, that's impressive to be able to be at that level. And then at the same time, your convictions match up with your level. I think that's really interesting. And
a lot of those convictions are spiteful to his audience.
Oh,
they find them spiteful to. I mean, he's that Southeastern was the album.
Yeah, absolutely.
His ideas are in opposition to a lot of what's going on there now.
But they go so much deeper than just sort of like, you know, table criticism. Like he starts talking about male identity.
Yeah.
You know, and that stuff cuts so much deeper that takes time to even ingest. So who knows if his audience or adjacent audiences or, you know, larger country music audience are taking the time, but at least he's out there saying it.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's impressive and, you know, takes every opportunity to do the right thing. It's just ridiculous how I don't know how he can spend so much time on Twitter. He's on Twitter like all the time, and like I just don't know how anybody, like especially celebrities who are engaged with their audience, how they can be on their like be answering that much. I don't get it.
Let's talk a little bit about social media,
Yeah.
marketing. We're musicians. We both are in that marketing world. And we were talking a little bit before the show about how do you pick the right platform?
Mm.
How do you not burn out?
Well, picking the right platform, there are some generalizations about the platforms that are pretty accurate. LinkedIn is a professional, platform. You're on it for career advancement, career advice, that kind of thing. Facebook is kind of the old stalwart, which has been around for so long and keeps going through different iterations. You're really, I think, there. You're connecting with.
Drowning in the mug. Oh, excuse me.
Yeah,
sorry.
no, you're totally right. I mean, it's hard to categorize, but what's funny is that people are moving away from it to a degree and going to more specific platforms like Instagram or TikTok, where it's less everything. It's less vomit. It's just it's more specific content. But part of its audience, like where your audience is, if you're a younger artist, you're going to need to be on Instagram and Reels and TikTok and Clubhouse while it was going for a little bit. But then, if you're an older artist, I mean, your Facebook, fans might be the most engaged with you. I mean, you have to look where your audience is. And also work with the mediums that work with you the best. I mean, if you're doing a lot of video content and you're very apt at doing video, you might as well be on, have a lot of Reels and be doing TikTok because the medium works for you.
Yeah.
That's important. But how to not burn out is first off, it's very easy to burn out because if you have the perspective of I need to be doing everything everywhere, you will instantly burn out within literally like a week or two. But if you focus on content that you like doing, and by content I mean, is it pictures, is it videos, is it point of view camera stories, is it holding your camera up in front of you while you play kind of thing? Whatever you feel comfortable with, just put it out there because people want to see stuff. They don't necessarily care, how often or what quality or whatever. But if it is easy for you to put it out there, that's a big key to know that you should continue doing that because, if you're good with video, do video. If you're only good with, audio sound bites or something like that and putting up SoundCloud, kind of promos, do that. So part of it is finding what you enjoy doing and then just doing more of it and keeping it light and fun and that kind of thing. Because if you get into the chasing game, you're,
It's over.
Yeah, it's over.
You're already behind.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, I was reading about Facebook's recent decline. They lost like 0.01% or 0.01 billion people.
Right.
Which equated to like something insane, like $300 billion. And this article is sort of biased, but this is a data company that wrote the article, and they're saying they're no longer in acquisition mode.
Oh, I see.
They're no longer growing.
Right.
It's going to decline like anything in life.
Right.
Trees grow, trees die.
Yeah.
And they were saying that instead of just putting content out there, you're going to need to put it out there and tell people what the reason is they should care. That's how the game's change. I mean,
sure.
I think we all know that intuitively anyway, but the data's backing that up now.
Yeah.
How do we do that as musicians in a attention-deprived society?
Well,
I asked a guy who wrote a song that's 4.5 minutes long.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Oh, they get longer. What's funny is that from posting stuff that people need to see why it's important or whatever, authenticity is a key. If you're putting anything out there that seems even mildly inauthentic, you're just adding to the doom scrolling, and you're just adding to the crap that's out there.
Vomit.
The vomit. So what's more interesting is one, being authentic, finding stories or ideas or thoughts that are very personal to you, and then just simply sharing them. And what that does is that people immediately recognize the authenticity first and then give it a listen. Whether or not they come back to listen or it makes them want to follow or share or whatever, like that stuff's out of your control. But what you can do is just find something that's meaningful to you and put it out there, and try to do that on a relatively consistent basis. Doesn't have to be every day all the time. But I think that's the first thing that people kind of have radars, and if they see something that's inauthentic, they just kind of let it go and they don't even pay attention. But then if they see something that is a unique perspective, which that's the other thing with social media, is that we all have our own stories and we all have our own perspective, and nobody else has that perspective. We can't forget that each of us is unique.
Mm-hmm.
The where the craft comes into play is, how do you tell your own story? So many of us as artists do it through our art, but at the same time, and you having like a marketing background, it's all about storytelling. So you can employ some of your own storytelling tools and skills as creating your art, and try to, what's my angle here? What's an interesting way to, come in at this bio or something like that. That's another way to you're implying to people why it's important without having to say, this is important, please listen.
Yeah. I had a marketing discussion this week with someone. Well, it was last week actually, because it's Monday today. Couldn't have been this week. Within the last week, about storytelling or songwriting and marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And you have in marketing, you have your funnels, right?
Yeah.
Your awareness, and you bring people in, and then you're cultivating the relationship. And I was like, it's kind of like songwriting. That's why I like that's why that's all even on my resume. It's because I know I have a verse, a chorus, a verse, a chorus. Maybe there's a bridge in there.
Right.
So they're guardrails. I already know that there's a bit of a formula.
Yeah. Yeah.
But inside of that, it's free reign, man. I can do whatever. So it's kind of the same thing. And I found that I just like that correlation. I think that's why I like both things, because there's a pattern that you're going to follow, but within that pattern, you can go wild.
Because I am a graphic designer by trade, like I do a good amount of logo and identity design.
Mm-hmm.
And pretty recently, I've been more outspoken about the correlation of creating logos or identity marks and writing songs. And to me, they're very similar, because for a couple reasons. One, with a song, you usually have a lot of disparate ideas that you're trying to gel into one most poignant idea, and then telling that in a good story. With a logo, if I have a company and our mascot is a bird, well, there's a million different bird-related ideas, but you're trying to find one that is a synopsis of other emotions. So I'm a workout company, and my mascot is a bird. Well, I want to have something that's very active looking. Whereas if I was a flower shop and my mascot was a bird, it's not going to look like it's a running bird. It's going to look like it's incorporated with a leaf. So you're encapsulating different emotions and ideas down and distilling it into one mark. And then once you're done with that one mark, it's done. Usually brands keep logos for at least 5 to 6 years or whatever. Mm-hmm. A song is done. Like, they're done. You don't go back to them and change them or whatever it is. I mean, some people do with folk songs, things like that. But for the most part, it's done. It's its own essence. You put it out there, it turns into something else, or doesn't, or not. So to me, they're very similar. And it's also like you finish them in a period of time. Usually with the logo, there might be a deadline or something like that, but you work towards an end goal. Whereas songwriting's the same thing. You're working towards an end goal. You might tweak after that, and perfect, and kind of, in the design world, you share initial sketches of logos with people and get reactions. You do the same thing in songwriting. Each week I try to play a new song that I've written the week before at this residency. Mm-hmm. Well, while I'm playing that, I'm trying to pay attention to, are people tapping their foot? Are people, I had last week, I had someone come up and ask me right after the song ended, like, do you have that recorded? Do you have that, like,
oh, wow.
That's the type of feedback that you can get when you take something out and perform it. And it's the same thing with any artistic ability. sometimes you have to do that with guardrails. So I don't play every song for just anybody because there needs to be some context to it. Being in a coffee shop playing music, there's enough context there where people are listening to where and they want to have a good time. So if a song works, you're like, oh, that was good feedback. I'm not gonna walk into a corporate office and play a song because they're gonna be like, get out of here. You're trespassing. Yeah, we're trying to do that. Yeah.
I don't care if you brought a logo or not. Get out.
Exactly. So, there's a lot of correlations with really the idea of craft and honing something and finishing it. But that was a kind of a correlation that I made recently. And it made me excited to talk about it that way, even with potential clients. I mean, because that's a unique perspective that I could present as a value proposition.
Absolutely.
And that takes time, but yeah.
Let me ask you this: Sonic branding and Sonic logos.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with this world?
So the other day on Marketplace, did you hear that piece?
No.
They did.
Who was?
Kai Risdall interviewed a guy about
Steve Keller.
I don't know.
Okay.
It might be. But he was talking about the Netflix.
Yeah.
The Apple one is probably really famous because when you start the Apple up, you get the
HBO.
All that stuff. That is Sonic branding, and the guy was saying how this is only going to take off. You hear it in podcasts. I think we had that conversation. You hear it in podcasts. You hear it with.
You hear it right here on this podcast.
Exactly.
Same one.
Yeah. And
every time.
Yeah. So that stuff is important. I think that's where, will there become micro degrees of it? Like, for example, if every Instagram post that you post, you had a little video, would people begin to associate that with you? Sometimes the audio cues come before the visual cues. It just depends on if people have their sound on when they're scrolling. I mean, we're in a soundbitey world, and we're in a very audio visual world, especially with the number of podcasts that are going. And so audio branding is huge. It will be huge.
Speaking of Clubhouse, earlier I was in a Clubhouse room with Stephen Keller, who's like the leading authority on Sonic branding. I didn't even know it was a thing, and I was reading this guy's bio, and I was like, this is where I need to be. And I've just been fascinated by it because there's some visceral sensory tap into your brain with a noise.
Yeah.
And I'm reading all the time now about what is it? How are you able to do that? Because sound is so powerful, and without getting super spiritual on this podcast, but any religious text you go back to, they all start with God spoke, whatever, whatever entity it is. That's the first thing. Sound is important, man.
That's funny because at the dawn, whatever your spiritual beliefs are, but at the dawn of the existence of a particular religion, it's funny if you could go back and see that was the first thing, is that someone had to speak into someone's ear, because how else would information have been translated back then?
Yeah.
Because this was pre-papyrus. They didn't have written materials per se, mass distributed.
Yeah.
So whenever it first started with storytelling, and then they eventually wrote those down. But if you're a storyteller, who gives you an idea? It's oh, I heard a voice. There's no more ultimate idea than just hearing a voice. So yeah, there's probably some deep meaning in our audio. I mean, you have kids when Esme was in utero, they talk about how much they hear and how it's essentially it is this level of noise, all the time.
Yeah.
So when they're born, it's too quiet. There's not enough consistent sound. It's more louder, sparse sounds. Whereas when they're in the stomach, they're getting a constant level of noise. So when you shush a child, you're recreating their experience, which calms them down. So the sonic, nature of our existence is, I think it's probably the last thing that's been tapped into on a commercial level.
We're getting there, baby.
Yeah. No, we're totally getting there, especially because we are listening to so much audio now. Even if it's not music, it's podcasts or it's radio. I mean, over the pandemic, podcast listenership dropped because people weren't commuting.
They weren't in their cars.
They weren't in their cars. And so radio went way back up. And so, you know, I mean, I love Radio Lab and their intro.
Yeah.
I mean, but Chad Abumrad, he was an audio designer. Like, there's a reason why that sounds like that, because he intended it to be like that.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't someone, and he does that. He still does it. You know, and I think that's really cool because the branding behind it. And if you want to correlate it to artists, you know, your most favorite artists have a sound.
Yeah.
They have a certain amount of instruments, and they have a certain range that they do, and they usually mic their voices in similar ways or sing in similar ways, and that is identifiable and recognizable. And people only recently, or you know, within the last 20, 25 years, are understanding that you can craft that.
Yeah.
You don't have to be an artist to craft it. You can do it for a branding purpose.
Get the right compressor and
right. You know, but even going into the notes, I mean, you know, notes that elevate that elevate sound hopeful. Notes that have a minor key sound, you know, I mean, all that theory is super important when it comes to branding. I mean, that's all geeky stuff, but I would listen to that all the time. I'm gonna look up this video that she's
yeah. All right, let's listen to a song and then we'll come back and talk a little bit more with Rene Moffatt. You're listening to the Alex Rhodes Show on KPEO. You are listening to the Alex Rhodes Show, broadcasting live from Denver, Colorado and Toronto, Canada. This is KPEO World Community Radio.
Keep me honest and keep me on my toes. Keep on showing me the love I need and see how my heart grows. So my heart with kindness, and you will surely read the heart to love you endlessly, a love for yours to keep. We get ahead, and sometimes we fall behind. You need your friends and your families. They are the ones who will remind, the ones to keep you grounded. While others have resigned, they made you well-rounded, so you repay in kind. This I ask of you, take all that I do, hold it up to the fire, hold me to the flame, let it burn and see what will remain.
by Rene Moffatt. I want to thank Rene for coming in tonight.
Thanks, Alex.
We got a show coming up.
Yeah, we do.
Tell me about the show again.
This Friday night, the song swap at the Molecule Effect. Coffee shop, bar, wine bar. They got beer. They got a little light fare on tap. It's a really great place. The owners are super supportive of local arts. A lot of local art on the walls. They have comedy on Thursdays. They have live music on Fridays, which you will be joining me this Friday for a song swap. We'll be up there for 2 hours playing songs back and forth. It'll be a good time.
I got to have an hour of material?
You do.
I'm going to have to start practicing now. So you have a residency at the Molecule Effect every Friday night?
Every Friday night, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Logan and Alameda at 7 o'clock.
Yep. Yeah.
All right. Is there anything we didn't cover? You want to play another song for us?
I'll play another song.
Great.
Yeah.
All right.
That's always good.
Yeah, it is good.
Close it out with a song.
Do we have a new album coming out? New stuff you're working on?
That's a good question. I've got an EP that's going to come out hopefully within the next few months. Maybe 6 months or so. And the producer who worked on King of the Mountain that we heard tonight.
Yeah.
He's working on it.
And who's the producer?
Mark Williams. He's worked with a lot of cool people over in DC. We go back because I used to live in DC. This song is a little bit of a newer one. It's called "Don't Pick the Right One." That's not right. Here we go. When times are hard and you need to catch a break, you're too quick to jump on something you shouldn't take. While it might satisfy your most pressing of needs, in the end it'll only bite the hand that feeds. What looks good on paper will fade over time. What's written in the heart is better for the mind. Don't take the first chance that comes along. Don't pick the right one when you know it's wrong. When you find yourself alone and you want someone to hold, you're quick to find a lover from a picture you've been sold. It's easy to confuse lust for loving someone else, but when the morning comes it'll be so hard to love yourself. What looks good on paper will fade over time. What's written in the heart is better for the mind. Don't take the first chance that comes along. Don't pick the right one, you know it's wrong. There's a hidden cost to every path you choose. And even if you've got nothing to lose, you might walk away a millionaire. But if you lose yourself, baby, if you lose yourself, who's gonna care? Sitting cross-legged on the floor, my head is clear, and I have shut the open door. I have no fear, I have no fear. What looks good on paper will fade over time. What's written in the heart is better for the mind. Don't take the first chance that comes alone. Don't pick the right one. Don't pick the right one. Don't pick the right one when you know it's wrong. You know it's wrong. You know it's wrong. You know it's wrong.
Rene Moffatt on kpeo.org. Thanks for coming in, man. This
Thanks,
has been
Alex.
really fun.
Let's do
appreciate
it again. Let's do it again.
Absolutely. And you can catch us Friday night, Molecule Effect, 7 o'clock.
We'll be there.
All right. We're going to get back to the music right now.